Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you today, but I do want to go over the sports reporting and writing notes with you. So this is the best way that we can do it, just live and through your computers. All right, so today is hashtag lesson goals. You are going to go over why sports reporting is important for journalists to know how to do. And we are going to cover how to report sports. And we are going to learn the types of sports stories. All right, so sports coverage. First of all, the question may arise, why do we even need to cover sports? What's the big deal? So this is actually a very important part of student media. And surprisingly enough, it is followed closely by students. It's followed by the community, and sometimes it's even followed by colleges, especially for recruiting purposes and for scholarshiping. So it is very important to have good sports coverage in the school newspaper. All right, now we're going to get into how to actually go about covering sports. We covered why it's important. Now we're going to look at how do you actually do it. So the first thing that's important is to know the sport that you are actually covering. And that seems like it would be kind of a no-brainer, like, duh, of course I need to know the sport that I'm covering. But in order to accurately and dependably report what happened in a game or match or meet, you do need to know the rules and guidelines. You need to know why a specific foul was called. You need to know why there were penalties. You need to know why someone might have been disqualified. And the reason being, because if you don't know those pieces of information, then you're just leaving out something that's really important to fans and that's important to the story as a whole. Along with that, you need to know the positions of the players so that then you can report what position they play on the team and you know what their responsibilities are. You need to know the basic timeline of a match or game. So for instance, is it in quarters? Is it in halves? How long are the quarters? How long are the halves? How long are the periods? It's just important to know. And then the last thing is the vocabulary of the game. So if you aren't familiar with certain terms that you might hear, I would recommend going online and familiarizing yourself so that then you know. For instance, if you go to a football game, do you know what a touchdown is? It's kind of important to know. Do you know what a field goal is? Do you know what a safety is? All of those things, important to sports reporting, because if you don't know what they are, it's going to be really difficult for you to cover that sport and cover what's happening in the game. All right. Now, along with that, you also need to know who is involved in the sport. Know a little bit about the background of the players, and then also know how to spell and pronounce their name. Now, about the background, take, for instance, Michael Jordan, who is on our slide right now because he just got his nails did. Oh, man, that's awful. Anyway, so important piece of his story is that he actually tried out for his basketball team in high school and then he was cut. That would be an important and interesting fact to include in any type of story that you write about him, because that really shows that no matter what you do, persistence pays off. So little bits and pieces like that will really take your story from kind of to, wow, that's really kind of interesting, kind of cool. All right. Now, along with that, you need to know the current and previous record of the team that you are covering. So last year, was it a winning year or a losing year for the team? How about this year? Are they doing really well? Or are they not doing so well? Are there any players that are about to break any school records? All of those things, important to know when you're covering a particular sport. Along with that, know where to find and how to use the statistics from a game. Now, here's what that means. You need to know what's important to the particular sport. For instance, in basketball, it's not essential to know the weight of the players. All right? It's not that important. However, if you're covering a wrestling meet, the weight of the wrestler is a vital piece of information that you need. All right. So in one instance, in basketball, including the weight could be kind of weird, but in wrestling, it's really important and necessary. All right. So just knowing how to use those statistics is really important. All right. Now we're going to look at the types of stories that you can write for sports coverage. Now, this is not an all-inclusive list. There are a couple other types of stories that you could write, but for the most part, especially for the Panorama and for Ashland High School, these are the typical stories that we write. All right. So the first one is the game story, and that tells about one particular game or match. The second type is a preview story, which gives details and predictions about an upcoming game, match, or season. The third type is a review story, which reviews an entire season, and oftentimes this does include team or individual awards and recognitions. So if any players were named first team, OCC, that's important to know. And the last type that we're going to go over is the player profile. And that focuses on one particular athlete who is performing well or had a successful season. All right, so let's look at this first type, game stories. A game story typically focuses on one game or match, and it digs into the specifics about that game or match. It is written in inverted pyramid style. And here's the basics of what you should include in a game story. The lead needs to have the outcome of the game or match. So you absolutely have to say, this is the team that won. This is the score. All right? That should be included in the lead because it is an incredibly important piece of information. The following paragraph should identify the game's exciting and important moments. So was there anything really exciting on the edge of your seat that happened? Did it go up to the buzzer? Was it like right at the end of the game that the team won? What happened? You should include quotes from the players and coaches. You do have to have a quote from at least one player and at least one coach. And those quotes, make sure that you focus on the emotional response rather than on the facts of what happened. Because really, I can go online and look up the facts of the story. I can look up who won. I can look up the statistics. What I can't look up is how a player was feeling at a particular moment in the game. How did the quarterback feel when he threw the interception and thought that he had completely botched the game? How did he feel when he was able to come back in and redeem himself? Those are the things that I want to hear, that the reader wants to hear, is that emotional response. And then end with what's next for the team. So for instance, what games are coming up, what are they doing to prepare for next season, etc., etc. All right, the next type of story we're going to look at is a preview story. And the preview story is incredibly timely. It previews an upcoming game, match, season, competition, etc. So it literally is exactly what it seems like it would be. You're just previewing something that you are expecting to have happen. Or expecting to, you are previewing something that will happen. Ugh, words are hard sometimes. Anyway, you should explain why this event is so special. So it's not just about any old event that you would do a preview story. It would be something that would be impactful, important, interesting, that people are watching. Focus on why it is so interesting. Is it because of a rivalry? Is there a potential to progress to a tournament? Is this a playoff game? Why is it important? Okay? And the goal of these preview stories is to show how the teams match up to one another. All right. The next story is a review story. And a review story does exactly what it sounds like it would do. It reviews one sport's entire season. Okay, so for instance, we could write a review story about the wrestling team. Since they went on to state, and we have one of these state winners attending Ashland High School. That would be a good review story. It is written in inverted pyramid style, and the lead should include the basics of the season. So what happened throughout the season? It should include important outcomes. So again, were there any awards that the team won? Were there any titles that were won? Where did they go? Did they go to playoffs? Did they earn that right? Did they not? We just want to know. Okay. It should include quotes from the players and coaches. Again, at least one player and at least one coach. And you should end with how the team plans to prepare for next year. So what are they looking forward to? How are they planning on either continuing this momentum into next year, or how are they planning to adjust in order to ensure that they are more successful next year? All right, and then the last type of story that we are going to look at today is the player profile. And a player profile focuses on one player who had or is having a standout performance throughout a season or career. And again, like I mentioned before, a good example of this would be Josh Beaver. He just won the wrestling championship state title for his weight class, and that is a pretty standout performance. Now, additionally, since he's a senior, you could even focus on his entire career, because from what I recall, he did wrestle from his freshman year all the way through his senior year. So really, you could focus on the entirety of the career. Focus throughout this story on how this person grew as a player. So did they have any struggles that they had to overcome? What successes did they experience? How were they able to overcome those struggles, those issues that they had, and experience that success? What did they have to do in order to get to that level? And then also, a very satisfying ending to these types of stories are the future plans. So where does this athlete plan to go after this? Are they planning to return to the team next year? Are they planning to go on and compete in this event when they go to college? What are their future plans? Okay. Now, this type of story is typically more narrative written as opposed to direct reporting. It doesn't focus as much on just the bare bones facts as it does on telling this person's story. All right. So it's just a little bit different. You should include quotes from the players and coaches. And again, you're looking for the emotional response rather than just the regurgitation of facts. Because really you can get facts from anywhere, but I can't get the emotional response unless it is from a person who actually went through this experience. So those are the basic types of stories that you're going to be able to write for the panorama. Sorry, my cat wanted to say hello to you all. But the best piece of advice that I can give you as far as writing is concerned is to play to your strengths. So if you know that you are not the best when it comes to knowing all of the details of a particular sport, maybe a player profile would be the better choice for you. Maybe doing something that is not quite as technically focused as what a review story or a preview story would play to your strengths. If you are better with direct reporting rather than narrative reporting, maybe going with a preview or a review story would be the best interest, the best choice for you, because then that again enables you to play to your strengths. All right. So hopefully this has been helpful. You will have a sports story that will be due this coming Monday. So you have until then to go through and come up with your story idea and come up with how you're going to write it. All right. So if you have any questions, I will be back or expect to be back tomorrow, so then I can answer them. But until then, have a great day, and I'll see you then.